All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about mergers and acquisitions, or M&A. These are the massive headline-grabbing deals that can literally reshape an entire industry overnight. When one company decides to buy another, it's a huge strategic bet on the future. And as we're about to see, it is one of the highest stakes gambles in the entire world of business.
And that brings us to the central, kind of crazy, puzzle we're going to unpack. Because here's the thing. The data on this is, well, it's pretty shocking. Study after study consistently shows that the vast majority of these mega deals don't create value, they actually destroy it. So why on earth do the smartest people in the room keep rolling the dice on a strategy that's so likely to fail?
Just let that number sink in for a second. 70 to 90%. We're talking about 7, 8, even 9 times out of 10, these enormous deals do not deliver on their promises. That is a staggering failure rate for any business strategy, let alone one that involves billions, sometimes tens of billions of dollars. Figuring out why that number is so high is exactly what we're going to do.
Okay, so to really understand the gamble, we first have to understand the game itself. Because M&A isn't just one thing, There are different strategic plays, and each one has its own logic, its own potential prize, and of course, its own set of risks.
Every single one of these deals is built on one core, almost magical belief: synergy. It's this powerful idea that if you combine two companies, you'll create something that's way more valuable than the two could ever be on their own. It's the whole 1 + 1 = 3 concept. This is the promised land, the holy grail that justifies the entire M&A journey. So M&A basically comes in 3 main flavors. First, you've got a horizontal deal. That's just buying your direct competitor to grab more market share. The risk? Regulators might step in and block it. Then there's a vertical deal, buying a supplier or a distributor to control your entire supply chain. And finally, you've got a conglomerate deal, which is buying a totally unrelated business to diversify. The key trade-off to see here is that a conglomerate deal has low regulatory risk, but as we'll find out, the risk of a massive culture clash goes through the roof. So we know the failure rate is huge and the plays are complex. This brings us right back to that big question: why? Why take such a massive risk in the first place? What are the powerful forces that are pushing these companies to make these decisions? Well, there are some very compelling operational reasons. M&A can be a huge shortcut to growth. Why spend years building a customer base when you can just buy one? It's the classic build versus buy dilemma. Acquiring a company with critical technology or talent can be so much faster and even cheaper than developing it all from scratch. And of course, there's the big one: achieving economies of scale. The idea that you can combine operations, eliminate redundancies, and drive down costs.
But it goes deeper than just operations. This quote really gets to the heart of it. There's some serious financial engineering going on. See, a bigger, more stable company can take on more debt, and the interest on that debt is tax deductible. This creates this immense internal pressure to make a deal work, at least on paper, often leading to wildly optimistic forecasts about just how much synergy you can really squeeze out. Okay, so we've covered the why. Now let's get into the how. Once a company decides to pull the trigger on a deal, the whole thing really hinges on one critical question: what is it worth? How do you actually put a defensible price tag on a multi-billion-dollar company? Well, every deal follows a pretty disciplined life cycle. It all kicks off with strategy and finding the right target. Then it dives into due diligence. That's the intense investigation where you check for any skeletons in the closet. After that, you've got negotiation. And finally, you hit the phase where most deals live or die: post-merger integration. That's where the real hard work of combining two companies actually begins. So back to that central question of execution. This isn't just guesswork. Investment bankers use a whole toolkit of sophisticated, time-tested methods to figure out what a company's really worth. And there are 3 main ways they do it. First is the discounted cash flow, or DCF, which tries to calculate a company's intrinsic value based on all the future cash it's expected to generate. Second, there are public comps. Basically, you just look at what similar publicly traded companies are worth right now. And third is precedent transactions, which is key. This is where you look at what buyers have paid for similar companies in past deals, which helps you capture that control premium you have to pay to get a deal done. So you have these different methods giving you different numbers. What do? Well, no single method is perfect. So bankers will plot the valuation ranges from all 3 approaches onto a chart that looks like this, which they call a football field.
This visual helps them create a single, defensible price range that becomes the foundation for the entire negotiation. It's how they triangulate their way to a justifiable price. The deal is priced. The negotiation is done. The papers are signed. And now we enter the minefield. This is where we finally answer our initial question and uncover the real, often hidden reasons behind that shocking 70 to 90% failure rate. And here's the answer. It is not the math that dooms most deals, it's the people. Time and time again, the #1 killer of a merger is a clash of corporate cultures. You can have the most brilliant financial model in the world, but if the people from the two companies just can't work together, the deal is destined to fail. Think of it this way. There's the science of integration, merging IT systems, supply chains, all the technical stuff. That's complicated, sure, but it's a solvable problem. Then there's the art, merging values, leadership styles, and just the basic ways people communicate. This is the messy, human challenge that is far, far harder to solve.
And the infamous Daimler-Chrysler merger is the textbook case study. On paper, it looked great, but in reality, you had a clash between a formal, hierarchical German management style and a more freewheeling, aggressive American one. The cultures were just fundamentally incompatible. Morale plummeted, key talent walked out the door, and the deal ultimately destroyed billions in value.
And this chart really sums it all up. The biggest pitfall is culture, but right behind it are two other classic deal killers. First, strategic misalignment. Think of the disastrous AOL-Time Warner deal, where a new media upstart bought a traditional media giant, and the two companies had completely different visions for the future. And second, it all comes back to those unrealistic synergy expectations, simply overpaying for a target based on flawed assumptions from the very start.
All of this really begs the question, with failure rates this high, and pitfalls this deep, is M&A just a mug's game, as it's often called in financial circles? Is it a game that's just rigged for failure? Well, not exactly. The key takeaway is that winning at M&A is just incredibly difficult. It requires so much more than just clever financial engineering. It demands this rare mastery of 3 distinct disciplines: a sound strategy, a disciplined execution, and most critically, a deep and empathetic understanding of organizational science, the art of leading people through massive, disruptive change. And that is the billion-dollar gamble.